Are continuing to flare up regarding Governor Noem's speech Wednesday during a joint session in Pierre regarding the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, the president of the Oglala Sioux tribe has issued a 4-page statement in response. President Frank Starr comes out, points to Noem's use of the term invasion, saying that what is happening at the southern border doesn't constitute an invasion. He also took issue with her use of the term ghost dancers. A portion of his statement reads as, quote, "We do not belong to South Dakota. We are older than South Dakota. Due to the safety of the Oyate, effective immediately, you are hereby banished from the homelands of the Oyate Sioux tribe." In response, Governor Noem issued a statement of her own, saying, quote, "It is unfortunate that President Starr comes out, chose to bring politics into a discussion regarding the effects of our federal government's failure to enforce federal law at the southern border and on tribal lands. My focus continues to be on working together to solve those problems." You can view both of their full statements right now on the Dakota News Now website.